This is a review of Behavioral Intervention Psychological Services Employee Manual. The intent of this training is to supplement your own review of the Employee Manual, and it should not replace an in-depth independent review by any employee, as well as follow-up review with an administrator. The table of contents will provide you with a broad overview of all the sections of the manual and will make it easier to find info later as needed. The Employee Manual is designed to get you familiar with our personnel policies and practices. It will also provide you with information to help you understand the terms and conditions of your employment as well as your responsibilities as an employee. It does not grant or create any rights, it's just a summary of BIP's current policies. The information contained in this manual applies to all employees of BIPS, and all employees are expected to abide by the policies. Each employee is responsible for reading, understanding, and complying with all of the provisions in this manual. Employees must comply with all policies described in the manual as a condition of continued employment. All BIPS employees are at-will employees and are terminable at will. Nothing contained in the manual shall restrict or alter BIP's right to discipline or terminate any employee. The contents of this manual is not a promise of continued employment or as a contract of employment between BIPS and any of its employees. Throughout the manual, reference will be made to full-time or part-time employees or employment. With the exception of the classifications by New York State and the BACB, for the purpose of LBA-BCBA supervision and the requirements of Section 4.13 paid family leave, these terms shall apply specifically to the following. Full-time salaried employees, those employees who are paid on a salary basis and expected to work at least 40 hours per week, or part-time hourly employees, those employees who are paid by the hour and who are expected to work less than 40 hours per week. Throughout the manual, reference will be made to exempt or non-exempt employees or employment. Speak with the office manager to find out more, but for simplicity's sake, exempt employees are on a fixed salary, making a certain minimum amount of money, and who are typically in a management or supervisory role. Non-exempt employees are not in a supervisory or management role, and at BIPS are typically paid hourly, but they could be salaried or full-time as a paraprofessional. If you have any questions about anything in this manual, you should contact the office manager or one of the directors or human resources. Any questions or complaints will be treated confidential whenever possible. Throughout the manual, reference will be made to investigations of complaints or policy violations. BIPS, either itself or at its sole discretion through a delegated investigator, will conduct an investigation into all reports, complaints, or other information about suspected harassment or other policy violations, regardless of whether that information was reported in verbal or written form. Section 1.1, Changes in Policy. This manual may be modified or changed at any time, with or without notice to employees, at the sole discretion of BIPS. BIPS reserves the right to interpret and or clarify any policy and or any procedure stated in this manual, in whole or in part, at any time, with or without notice to employees. Notice will be given once the manual has been updated. Any modification to this manual or BIPS policy and or procedure will be effective on the date determined by BIPS and will be distributed to all employees. No individual supervisor or manager has the authority to change this manual in whole or in part or any BIPS policy or procedure at any time on their own. Section 1.2 talks about employee orientation. After orientation, employees will be introduced to their supervisors, who will then introduce the new employee to other BIPS staff. The supervisor will also review the new employee's job description and scope of position with them and explain BIPS evaluation procedures to the new employee. Employee information and data. We rely on the accuracy of information contained in the employment application and the accuracy of other data presented by you throughout the hiring process and thereafter during your employment. Any misrepresentation, falsification, or material omission of any such information or data may result in exclusion of a job applicant from further consideration for employment or in the event the person has already been hired, the termination of their employment. BIPS is an equal opportunity employer that does not discriminate in personnel decisions regardless of race, color, religion, sex, gender, age, creed, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, citizenship, pregnancy, veteran status, genetic predisposition, or victim status. If you believe you have been discriminated against or retaliated against, report the incident to the office manager, a director, or HR. Complaints will be handled in accordance with our unlawful harassment policy. BIPS does not discriminate against any qualified employee or applicants due to their disability or perceived disability as long as they can perform essential job functions that they were hired for. The company is committed to providing reasonable accommodations to individuals with disabilities who have made BIPS aware of their disability. Employees with disabilities should contact the office manager to request reasonable accommodations. They should submit a written request as soon as possible upon learning or becoming aware of the need for accommodation. The office manager may meet with the disabled individual to discuss the limitations resulting from their disability and potential accommodations that BIPS may make to help them overcome those limitations. BIPS will determine the reasonableness of the requested accommodation by considering factors such as the nature and cost of the accommodation, whether it will enable the employee to perform the essential functions of their job, the impact of the requested accommodation on BIPS operation, and whether an alternative accommodation may meet the disabled individual's needs. Employees will not be discriminated against for having a disability or retaliated against for making a request for accommodation. If an employee believes they have been discriminated against based on a disability or retaliated against for making a request for reasonable accommodation, they must notify the office manager, director, and/or HR. Complaints of discrimination or retaliation will be handled in accordance with our unlawful harassment policy, which will be treated as confidential to the extent practicable. BIPS also complies with laws like the Pregnancy Discrimination Act and the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, ensuring reasonable accommodations for pregnancy, childbirth, or related medical conditions. They provide breaks, assistance, leave, and lactation breaks for qualified employees, but won't require them to take paid or unpaid leave if another reasonable accommodation is available. BIPS prohibits unlawful discrimination and harassment based on various characteristics, including race, color, religion, age, creed, disability, marital status, citizenship, pregnancy, veteran or military status, genetic predisposition, victim status, or any other protected category. Harassment can exist even without job loss or economic benefit. Examples of prohibited conduct include visual, verbal, physical, and retaliatory conduct. The policy only prohibits harassment on the basis of non-sex-based characteristics protected by law. Harassment based on sex, gender, and sexual orientation is strictly prohibited as well, but is covered under another policy. The complaint procedure provides for the investigation of any claim of prohibited harassment, disciplinary action against one found to have engaged in prohibited harassment, and remedies for any victim of prohibited harassment. Employees, supervisors, managers, or other officers are responsible for maintaining a workplace free from prohibited harassment. If a harasser's actions or words constitute unlawful harassment, they must tell the harasser that their actions are not welcome and must stop. Reports of harassment can be verbal or written, but written complaints are encouraged. BIPS will investigate all complaints of prohibited harassment and will keep all information confidential. If BIPS investigation is conclusive, appropriate corrective action will be taken in a timely manner, and measures will be taken to deter future harassment. The complaint procedure provides for the prompt, thorough, and objective investigation of any claim of prohibited harassment, appropriate disciplinary action against one found to have engaged in prohibited harassment, and appropriate remedies for any victim of prohibited harassment. Every BIPS employee, supervisor, manager, or officer, as well as individuals with whom we do business with, is responsible for maintaining a workplace free from prohibited harassment. Accordingly, any such person who believes the actions or words, whether written or verbal, of a coworker, supervisor, manager, officer, or other people that we do business with, or incidents involving those individuals constitutes unlawful harassment, They must take the following actions. First, if possible, tell the harasser that their actions are not welcome and must stop, and then promptly report the harassing actions, words, or incidents to the office manager, a director, and/or HR. Reports may be done either verbally or in writing, but we strongly encourage that employees file a written complaint. The complaint should be as detailed as possible and include the names of the individuals involved, any witnesses to the harassment, direct quotes or evidence like notes or emails of the harassment. All complaints of prohibited harassment will be promptly investigated by BIPS. We are also committed to investigating any instance of alleged or suspected prohibited harassment that comes to BIPS' attention, even if the victim does not make any complaint or does not want the matter pursued. The alleged victim and accused harasser shall each be afforded an opportunity to present their version of events during BIPS investigation. All people working for BIPS are hereby directed and required to cooperate with BIPS in conducting its investigation into complaints of alleged harassment or other instance of prohibited harassment that comes to its attention. All complaints and the investigation of complaints are confidential to the maximum extent reasonably possible, consistent with law and BIPS' commitment to conduct a thorough investigation. Everyone involved in the reporting and investigation of prohibited harassment are obligated to keep the information pertaining to the investigation confidential to the maximum extent possible, to protect the privacy of those involved in the investigation, and to allow BIPS to conduct an objective and appropriate investigation. If the investigation is conclusive and harassment prohibited by this policy is found to have occurred, appropriate corrective action will be taken in a timely manner, and appropriate measures will be taken to deter any future harassment. Corrective action may include a variety of measures, such as counseling, training, and/or discipline, up to and including termination of the persons who engaged in prohibited harassment. Once the investigation is complete and a determination has been made, that determination will be communicated to the complaining employee, the victim, and if the victim is not the employee who made the complaint, as well as the accused harasser. Retaliation against an employee who makes a good faith complaint of harassment under this policy or who participates in an investigation into alleged harassment as prohibited by this policy is strictly prohibited and will not be tolerated. Follow-up interviews may be conducted to ensure retaliation has not occurred. Sexual Harassment Prevention Policy. BIPS is committed to maintaining a work environment free from unlawful sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is unacceptable, strictly prohibited, and will not be tolerated by BIPS. Anyone who engages in sexual harassment in violation of this policy will be subject to discipline, up to and including termination, or other corrective action as appropriate. The policy applies to all employees providing services to BIPS in the workplace, as well as everyone with whom we do business. All such individuals are prohibited from engaging in unlawful sexual harassment. Retaliation is unacceptable, strictly prohibited, and will not be tolerated by BIPS. Any person covered by this policy who engages in retaliation prohibited by this policy will be subject to discipline up to and including termination or other corrective action as appropriate. BIPS will conduct an investigation consistent with this policy in response to any complaint about sexual harassment and will take appropriate disciplinary or other corrective action against the harasser whenever prohibited sexual harassment is found to have occurred. All employees are required to cooperate with any investigation of sexual harassment conducted by BIPS. All employees covered by this policy are encouraged to report any harassment or behaviors that violate this policy. Reports of sexual harassment can be made in writing or verbally. Managers and supervisors are required to report any complaint that they receive or any harassment that they observe or become aware of. So what is sexual harassment? It's a form of sex discrimination and includes harassment on the basis of sex, sexual orientation, self-identified or perceived sex, gender expression, gender identity, and the status of being transgender. Sexual harassment is not limited to sexual contact, touching, or expressions of a sexually suggestive nature. Sexual harassment includes unwelcome conduct, which is of a sexual nature or directed at an individual because of that individual's actual, self-identified, or perceived sex, sexual orientation, gender, including gender expression or gender identity, or transgender status, when such conduct has the purpose or effect of unreasonably interfering with an individual's work performance or creating a hostile work environment, even if the complaining individual is not the intended target of the sexual harassment. Such conduct is made either explicitly or implicitly a term or condition of employment. Submission to or rejection of such conduct is used as the basis for employment decisions affecting an individual's employment. Such conduct has a purpose or effect of treating an individual unequally or less well than others with regard to a term or condition of employment. There are two main types of sexual harassment: hostile work environment sexual harassment and quid pro quo sexual harassment. Hostile work environment sexual harassment can consist of unwanted sexual advances, threats, derogatory comments, signs, jokes, pranks, intimidation, physical conduct, violence, or other conduct which is of a sexual nature, or which is directed at an individual because of that individual's sex, where such actions is more than a petty slight or trivial inconvenience, where the conduct alters the terms of employment for the individual subject to the harassment as set forth above. It makes no difference if the individual engaging in the conduct is just joking or teasing or just being playful. Sexual harassment can also occur when a person in authority tries to trade job benefits for sexual favors. This can include hiring, promotion, continued employment, or any other terms, conditions, or privileges of employment. This is also called quid pro quo harassment. The following is a list of some types of acts that may constitute sexual harassment and that are strictly prohibited. Physical acts of a sexual nature, like touching, pinching, patting, kissing, hugging, grabbing, brushing against another employee's body or poking another employee's body, rape, sexual battery, molestation, or attempts to commit any of those. Unwanted sexual advances or propositions, like requests for sexual favors, accompanied by implied or overt threats concerning the target job's performance evaluation, a promotion, or other job benefits. Subtle or obvious pressure for unwanted sexual activities. Repeated requests for dates or romantic gestures, including gift giving. Sexually oriented gestures, noises, remarks, jokes, or comments about a person's sexuality, sexual experience, or romantic history. Written conduct like writing threatening, derogatory, or offensive letters, emails, text messages, or social media posts. Sexual or discriminatory displays or publications anywhere in the workplace, like pictures, videos, posters, or other materials that are sexually demeaning or pornographic. This includes sexual displays on BIPS issued computers or personal computers, cell phones or tablets in the workplace, or to anyone covered by this policy. It could also include sex stereotyping, which includes when someone's conduct or personality traits are judged or considered inappropriate because they are based on another person's ideas or perceptions about how individuals of a particular sex should look or act, or because they may not conform to other people's ideas or perceptions about how individuals of a particular sex should look or act. Hostile actions taken against an individual because of that individual's sex, sexual orientation, gender identity, or the status of being transgender. Who can be a target of sexual harassment? It can occur between any individuals regardless of their sex or gender. It does not matter if they are the same gender, different genders, agender, binary, or non-binary. Sexual harassment is prohibited regardless of whether the person engaging in the harassing conduct is a coworker, intern, temporary worker, subordinate, supervisor, or manager, or anyone else providing services to BIPS in the workplace, or anyone else with whom we do business. Where can it occur? It's not limited to the physical workplace itself. It can occur while employees are working remotely or interacting through virtual means, traveling for business, at an employer-sponsored event, or other occasions outside of work. Calls, texts, emails, and social media usage containing inappropriate messages, language, videos, or graphics may also constitute sexual harassment or contribute to unlawful workplace harassment for anyone covered by this policy, even if such things occur away from the workplace, on personal devices, or during non-work hours. Retaliation includes any conduct which might deter a reasonable person from making or supporting a charge of discrimination or harassment and is directed at someone who engages in protected activity. Protected activity includes opposing a discriminatory practice, making a good faith report of suspected violation of this policy, filing a harassment complaint, participating in investigation or proceeding of such a report or complaint, or encouraging a fellow employee to make a report. The retaliation provision is not intended to protect persons making intentionally false allegations of sexual harassment. Anyone who engages in retaliation prohibited by this policy will be subject to remedial or disciplinary action. Preventing sexual harassment is everybody's responsibility. BIPS cannot prevent or remedy sexual harassment unless it knows about it. Any employee or other person covered by this policy who's been subjected to behavior that may constitute sexual harassment, or who witnesses or becomes aware of potential instances of sexual harassment, is encouraged to do the following. If possible, tell the harasser that their actions are not welcome and must stop. Promptly report the harassing actions, words, or incidents to the office manager, a director, and/or HR. Reports of sexual harassment may be done either verbally or in writing. Regardless of how the complaint is made, a report of sexual harassment should be as detailed as possible and include the names of individuals involved, any witnesses to the harassment, direct quotes or evidence like notes or emails, etc., of the harassment. Individuals who report sexual harassment on the behalf of another person should state clearly that the complaint is being made on another person's behalf. Any supervisor or manager who receives a complaint or information about suspected sexual harassment, observes conduct that may be sexually harassing behavior even if they have not received a complaint, or for any reasons suspects that harassment is occurring, is required to take appropriate steps to stop any such behavior that they observe and to report such suspected sexual harassment. Managers and supervisors may not be passive and wait for an employee to make a claim of harassment. If they observe such behavior, they must act. In addition to being subject to discipline, if they engaged in sexually harassing conduct or retaliation themselves, supervisors and managers will be subject to discipline for failing to report suspected sexual harassment or otherwise knowingly allowing sexual harassment to continue. Supervisors and managers will also be subject to discipline for engaging in any retaliation prohibited by this policy. Bystander intervention. Any employee witnessing harassment as a bystander is encouraged to report it. A supervisor or manager that is a bystander to harassment is required to report it. There are 5 standard methods of bystander intervention that can be used when anyone witnesses harassment or discrimination and wants to help, including interrupting the harassment by engaging with the individual being harassed and distracting them from their harassing behavior. If a bystander feels unsafe interrupting on their own, they can ask a third party to intervene or assist in interrupting the harassing behavior. They can take notes of the potentially harassing behavior. They can check in with the person who has been harassed after the incident to see how they are feeling and let them know that the behavior or actions were unacceptable and that it should be reported. Or, if a bystander feels safe, confront the harassers and let them know that their behavior is inappropriate. However, when confronting harassment, physically assaulting an individual is never an appropriate response. BIPS sexual harassment investigation procedure includes the following. BIPS will investigate any reports of sexual harassment, whether verbal or written. Investigations will be conducted promptly and thoroughly. Upon receiving a complaint, BIPS will review the allegations and implement interim measures if necessary. The complainant and victim, if not the complainant, will present their version of events and relevant evidence. Anyone accused of sexual harassment will be informed of the allegations and given an opportunity to present their version of events. The investigation may also involve reviewing documentation and interviewing witnesses. Employees and other individuals involved in the investigation are required to cooperate and provide truthful answers. If the investigation is conclusive, disciplinary or corrective action will be taken and measures will be taken to deter future harassment. Once the investigation is complete, the determination will be communicated to the complainant, the victim, and accused harasser. Follow-up interviews may be conducted to ensure no retaliation has occurred. Sexual harassment is not only prohibited by BIPS, but is also prohibited by state, federal, and local law. In addition to the procedures described in this policy, if the sexual harassment involves potential criminal conduct, such as physical touching, coerced physical confinement, or coerced sex acts, it may be appropriate to report that conduct to the local police department. Individuals may also bring complaints to the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission or the New York State Division of Human Rights. Non-disclosure and confidentiality. The protection of confidential business information and trade secrets, collectively referred to as confidential information, is vital to the interests and success of BIPS. Such confidential information includes, but is not limited to, the following: compensation or pricing information regarding payment to BIPS from clients or insurance companies for services, pricing information and similar financial data, marketing strategies, pending projects and proposals, proprietary work product, personnel records, client records, history, treatment, or other client information, conversations between any persons employed by or associated with BIPS regarding any of the above confidential information. Employees in possession of or with access to BIPS confidential business information and or trade secrets must maintain the confidentiality of that information. The unauthorized disclosure, whether it's verbally or otherwise, of BIPS confidential business information and or trade secrets, or any document containing such confidential information, is prohibited. Any employee who engages in such unauthorized disclosure shall be subject to discipline or other corrective action up to and including termination. However, the terms of this section shall in no way restrict an employee's rights to discuss or disclose their own compensation from BIPS or terms and conditions of employment as permitted by law. Work hours and work days. Due to the varying nature of client services provided by BIPS, our clients receive services 7 days a week, and we operate and provide services to clients every day of the week, including the weekends. Full-time employees are expected to work a minimum of 40 hours in a work week, which may include either a Saturday or Sunday. Employees' work hours and or work days may be set or modified at the discretion of BIPS. If, on an ongoing basis, an employee needs to work hours other than their regularly scheduled hours, they must notify the office manager or one of the directors in writing of the requested new hours and days. Each request will be considered by BIPS on an individual basis in light of the operational and personal needs of BIPS, and may be granted or denied accordingly at the sole discretion of BIPS. Employees must continue to work their regularly scheduled hours or days unless they are advised by BIPS that their request for changed hours and days has been granted. For temporary scheduled changes, employees may receive up to 2 temporary scheduled changes for personal events per calendar year of up to 1 work day each. A temporary scheduled change is defined as a limited alteration in the hours, times, or locations where an employee is expected to work, including but not limited to using paid time off, working remotely, swapping or shifting work hours, or using short-term unpaid leave. A personal event can be providing care for a minor child when the employee provides direct or ongoing care, or for an individual with a disability for whom the employee provides direct or ongoing care to meet their needs of daily living and who is a family member or who resides in the caregiver's household, or it could be attending a legal proceeding or hearing for subsistence benefits, or for any qualifying reason for which the employee would be entitled to paid time off under a paid sick leave policy. If an employee needs to change their work schedule on a particular work day due to a personal event, they must notify the office manager or director as soon as possible, as soon as they become aware of the need for such a temporary schedule change. Please review this policy in detail to be aware of all the parameters related to making temporary schedule changes. For lunch breaks, part-time employees who work 6 or more hours per shift are entitled to an unpaid 30-minute duty-free lunch break, which will be taken in accordance with this policy. Full-time employees are entitled to a paid 60-minute duty-free lunch break, again, which shall be taken in accordance with this policy. Employees must note their meal periods on their time records. Section 2.8 covers the rights of lactating employees. Lactating employees may take reasonable breaks each day for the purpose of expressing breast milk. BIPS recognizes the importance of this right. For the purpose of this policy, an eligible employee is any BIPS employee who is lactating and who is nursing a child for up to 3 years following the birth of that child. An eligible employee wishing to express breast milk in the workplace must provide BIPS with advance notice so that proper arrangements may be made. Such notice is expected to be provided prior to the employee's return to work, or following the birth of the child, or otherwise prior to when the employee intends to express breast milk in the workplace. Review this policy in detail. While you may not be a lactating employee, you should be aware yourself of the rights of other employees and the policies of the company relative to employees who need to or wish to express breast milk in the workplace. BIPS maintains a personnel file on each employee, and those files are the exclusive property of BIPS. The personnel files and information contained therein are deemed confidential, and access to those files is restricted. Only authorized BIPS employees are permitted to access employee personnel files. Such authorized BIPS employees must preserve the confidentiality of personnel files and the information in those files, and may not share those files and information with any unauthorized people, or use those files or information for any purpose other than official BIPS business. Personal files are kept separately from other business files and secured to prevent unauthorized access. In order to ensure that employee personnel information is up to date at all time, each employee must promptly notify the office manager of any changes to their name, telephone number, home address, mailing address if that's different than their home address, marital status, name and number of dependents, beneficiary designations, certifications or scholastic achievements, and the individuals to be contacted in case of emergency. All such personnel information must be accurate and current at all times. In terms of severe weather and emergency closings, sometimes severe weather like a blizzard or hurricane, a fire, natural disaster, a public health emergency, a power failure, or other emergency situation may disrupt our operations. The decision of whether or not to temporarily close the office during those situations will be made by the director in their sole discretion or by their designee. If the director or their designee decides to temporarily close the office, employees will be promptly notified by the office manager. This is typically done via text message to all employees. Employees should presume that BIPS office is open unless they receive official notification from the office manager that the office is temporarily closed. Time off from scheduled work due to severe weather or emergency closing will be unpaid unless the employee is exempt from applicable federal, state, and wage hour laws. Employees could use accrued vacation time for such closures to be paid for that time off. At its discretion, BIPS may require employees to work remotely or via virtual means during severe weather or other emergency closing. Typically at BIPS, an emergency closing might be due to snow situations. Closures will be determined at a reasonable time in advance. For example, if it is predicted that snow will occur at 9 in the morning, the office determination will be made late at night depending on the forecast. If it is forecast that only an inch of snow is due to start accumulating at 9 in the morning, it is likely that sessions will not be canceled for that morning. If it is determined that snow is to accumulate between 3 and 6 inches with a start time of 3 a.m., it is likely that morning sessions for that morning will be canceled the night before. However, sessions for 12 p.m. and on may remain on schedule, and then with a determination made in the morning as to whether afternoon sessions will be canceled. As a reminder, assume the office is open unless you hear otherwise, and that sessions are on unless you hear otherwise. In terms of outside employment, employees can hold another job in addition to their position with BIPS as long as that other job does not conflict with their position at BIPS and does not interfere in any way with their work for BIPS. Despite holding another job, employees are expected to report to work and remain at work for their scheduled and or required work hours, including any overtime that may be required by BIPS. No employee can work another job during the same time which they are scheduled to work for BIPS. And if an employee is absent from work for BIPS because they are working another job, that employee may be subject to discipline up to and including termination. Our office, our equipment, and materials may not be used by an employee for their other job. If you use such things for their other job, they may be subject to discipline up to and including termination. In terms of termination of employment, there are two types: voluntary termination by the employee, which includes resignation or retirement, and involuntary termination of employment by BIPS, which can be getting laid off or getting fired. If an employee voluntarily terminates their employment with BIPS, they are expected to give BIPS 4 weeks written notice. This is due to the complexity of the hiring process and being able to match up employees with clients. It is a complicated process that takes more than 4 weeks, so the courtesy of 4 weeks would be appreciated. As mentioned elsewhere in this manual, all employment relationships with BIPS are on an at-will basis, and BIPS has the right to terminate the employment of any employee at any time with or without cause or notice in accordance with applicable law. We will inform any employee whose employment is involuntarily terminated with written notice that their employment is being terminated, the effective date of the termination, and the date in which any benefits they were entitled to during employment will end. Any employee whose employment terminates, either voluntarily or involuntarily, shall return all files, keys, records, and other items and materials that are the property of BIPS. Medical attention at work. If an employee is injured or becomes ill while at work, or is otherwise in need of medical attention at work, the employee's emergency contact person on file with BIPS or other person then designated by the employee should be contacted to transport that employee to the doctor or hospital as needed. If an ambulance or similar emergency medical service provider is called to evaluate the injury or illness of an employee on site and or to transport the employee to the doctor or hospital, the employee will be responsible for any charges incurred. Neither BIPS nor any of its employees are responsible for transporting other employees to their home, doctor, or hospital. If an employee transports another employee to their home, doctor, or hospital, the transporting employee shall fully indemnify any and all liability assessed against BIPS relating to such transportation. For example, if an employee says they're feeling nauseous and they can't work, and another employee says, "Hey, no problem, I don't think it's a good idea for you to drive home, but I'll take you home," and you drive that employee to their home, and they throw up in your car on the way to their home, whose responsibility is it to pay for that cleanup in the car? Those kinds of situations become the responsibility of the transporting employee. What BIPS seeks to do in this policy is to make it that an employee does not try to coerce or pressure another employee into transporting them if they do not feel comfortable. So we ask that employees do not put each other in this kind of situation. If you choose to transport someone or to assist them in this manner, that's okay, that's at your discretion, but you shall be required to indemnify the company against any issues relating to that transportation. Following a medical situation, a notice from the employee's physician may be required certifying that the employee is able to return to work and resume their job duties. If a reasonable accommodation is needed by the employee to return to work, the employee should notify BIPS in accordance with our accommodation policy. All employees who are issued keys to the office are responsible for the safekeeping of those keys. The last employee or designated employee who leaves the office at the end of the business day is responsible for ensuring that all doors are securely locked, the alarm system is armed, thermostats are set on appropriate settings, all blinds are closed, and any appliances like laminators or space heaters and lights are turned off. BIPS assumes no risk for any loss or damages to any personal property brought onto BIPS premises by employees. In terms of expenses and reimbursement, only authorized BIPS employees may purchase supplies or other items or materials on behalf of BIPS. No other employee shall incur any expense on behalf of BIPS unless they have prior written approval by the office manager or director. Business expenses incurred by an employee must have prior written approval for those expenses to be reimbursed to the employee by BIPS. Employees must promptly complete appropriate reimbursement request forms and return the completed forms to the office manager. Basically, before you decide that you need to get something, you should ask the office manager if we already have those items and if they can be provided to you. The office manager may ask what time frame you need those items for. If they're needed the next day and it's a low-cost item, you may be instructed to buy them and get reimbursement. However, if they're higher cost or are not needed urgently, the office manager may choose to order them or purchase them and have them available for you to pick up in the office. They also might have those items already in the office available for you to pick up. So to summarize, Please do not purchase items with the expectation that reimbursement will be happening unless you get that pre-approval. All BIPS employees are expected to maintain a high level of professionalism at all times. We expect people to comply with all federal, state, and local laws, rules, and regulations, as well as professional standards of practice, including the BACB's guidelines for responsible conduct for behavior analysts and professional, disciplinary, and ethical standards. The link to that document is available on our website in our resources page. The following is a non-exhaustive list of conduct and behavior that is prohibited and which employees must avoid: theft, unauthorized possession of BIPS property, or unauthorized removal of BIPS property from BIPS premises; falsification of timekeeping records; possession, manufacturing, or being under the influence of, or distributing or selling or using any kind of alcohol, marijuana, cannabis product, narcotics, controlled substances, etc.; threatening violence or engaging in disorderly conduct of any kind; willful or reckless destruction or defacement of property; insubordination; violating our policies on discrimination, harassment, or other policies in the manual; sleeping while on duty; performing personal business while on duty; violating general standards of cleanliness and good housekeeping; failing to perform job duties in a satisfactory manner; possessing a gun or any kind of weapon or contraband on our property; engaging in any off-duty misconduct or action that has a harmful connection to your job; engaging in any other act detrimental to the interests of BIPS, employees, or its clients. If anyone engages in these types of prohibited conduct or behavior, they may be subject to discipline up to and including termination. We expect that every employee will be punctual in attendance. All employees are expected to arrive on time, ready to work every day they are scheduled to work. Some examples of expectations are for sessions at the office, arriving 30 minutes prior to the end of the start time of the session. Use that time to prep yourself and the room for the session. You may use a non-billable code for that prep time. Sessions off-premise, like at a school or a home, arrive so as to be able to start working at the scheduled time. If the start time is 4 p.m., do not arrive at 4 p.m., arrive several minutes before at a minimum, so as to be able to start working with the client at 4 p.m. For meetings at the office, arrive at least 15 minutes early. Use that time to prep yourself for the meeting so it can start promptly. Please do not arrive late to sessions or meetings. It's very disruptive to the operation of BIPS. Anytime you arrive early, you may use non-billable time to do session prep or session note writing from a prior session. If you're unable to arrive at work on time or must be absent for an entire day, you must call each of the following individuals for your work. Call the family of the client who is to receive services. If you're going to a school, contact the school and ask them to relay a message to the class teacher. Emails to clients to cancel a session are not acceptable, as clients may not be checking their email on a regular basis. Call the case supervisor. The supervisor must be made aware of changes, cancellations, or no-shows. The schedule of the supervisor may be based on your schedule. You must also contact the office manager before your scheduled start time, if possible. You can contact the office manager on the office phone or their mobile phone. If you do not speak with the office manager or leave the office manager a detailed message, your absence will be considered a no-show or a no-show absence. Leaving a message with someone else to be relayed to the office manager is not a valid notification to BIPS of your absence. Having a relative or other third party call the office manager will not be considered valid notification to BIPS of your absence, except in a medical or other emergencies. If you incur 2 consecutive no-show or no-call absences, we may deem such absences to constitute a resignation of employment. Hourly employees or non-exempt employees will not be paid for time not worked. Exempt employees may be required to make up unscheduled absences and or unscheduled tardiness. BIPS expects that every employee will meet the billable hour target that BIPS sets for them. An employee's failure to meet their target hours will be deemed unsatisfactory performance and may result in performance improvement measures, such as a performance improvement plan, being instituted by BIPS, or disciplinary action up to and including termination. If an employee does not believe there is sufficient work available to meet their billable hour target, the employee must speak with the office manager or one of the directors or supervisors about how they'll be able to meet the billable hour target. If an employee believes that their billable hour target should be modified, the employee must submit a request to the office manager or one of the directors or supervisors, identifying the modifications requested and the reasons why. We'll review the request and either grant or deny the request based on our operational needs. No requested modification will take effect unless BIPS informs the employee in writing that their request has been granted and what the employee's new billable hour target is. BIPS telephones, computers, emails, and other equipment is intended to be used only for serving BIPS clients and for conducting BIPS business. All that equipment is the exclusive property of BIPS unless otherwise designated and should be used for work purposes only. Laptop computers or other equipment loaned by BIPS to an employee is for their exclusive use on BIPS matters only and shall not be modified in any way by the employee. The equipment is exclusive property of BIPS and may be recovered from an employee at any time for any reason by BIPS. Failure to return such equipment upon demand may lead to discipline up to and including termination. If such equipment malfunctions in any way, the employee must notify the office manager immediately. Loaned equipment must be brought into the office periodically or as requested by BIPS for servicing. Personal use of BIPS telephones, computers, and other equipment for personal reasons is discouraged. This includes using mobile phones or handheld electronic devices for texting, emailing, playing games, or internet access. If you must keep a mobile phone or a handheld electronic device with you during working hours, the device should be placed in vibrate only or silent mode. While we realize that some personal calls can only be made during regular business hours, you must keep the number and duration of those calls to a minimum. Employees should inform family members and friends not to call them at work for personal reasons during working hours, except in emergencies. For employees provided with a bipservices.com email address, they shall use that account for work purposes and to conduct company business, and not for personal reasons or emails, except in emergency circumstances. No employee shall use their personal non-BIPS email account for any work-related communications with clients or other BIPS employees or other business entities. Communications, whether it's telephone calls or emails from clients or other business-related entities to BIPS employees, must be responded to by the employee to whom the communication is addressed within 24 hours or one business day, unless the employee is on vacation or on sick leave or not scheduled to work, in which case the employee should respond promptly upon returning to work. BIPS reserves the unlimited right to access, review, copy, delete, and otherwise monitor any and all emails, files, documents, voicemails, and other messages on its email, computer, telephone, and data systems at any time with or without employee notice. Employees should be aware that deleting messages or files doesn't necessarily preclude BIPS from accessing them. Employees who require a personal computer to perform job function may request a computer from BIPS for their use while working. If an employee chooses to use their own personal computer for work purposes, we will provide them with the necessary tools to connect to its IT systems, but we also will require that the employee allow BIPS to install security software on the equipment to protect BIPS IT systems. Personal electronic devices, like mobile phones and tablets and computers, used for work purposes must always be protected with password or PIN locks or key passes at a minimum. Access to company or client-related accounts should not have passwords remembered by the device to prevent unauthorized access to PHI. Temporary file locations, like cache or download locations, should be purged and cleaned no less than every week. The procedures and outcomes of all assessment and treatment services and the fact that a client receives any services from BIPS are strictly confidential. Such information will be released only to individuals and entities specifically designated by the parent in writing, except as required by a court or competent jurisdiction, government agency, or otherwise required by law. All employees are required upon hiring and periodically thereafter to present proof of training in the identification and prevention of child abuse and maltreatment. If an employee, while working at BIPS, is presented with cause for suspecting child abuse or maltreatment by a parent or other caregiver, the following steps must be taken. LBAs and CBAs, which are mandated reporters, must report reasonable suspicions of abuse or maltreatment by telephone to the SCR. When possible, these reporters should first consult with Dr. Shamoon, but if such reporting will result in delay, they will advise Dr. Shamoon immediately following the call to SCR. Any paraprofessional, including credentialed BCBA and RBT providers, and all administrative staff who have reasonable suspicion of abuse or maltreatment by a parent or caregiver, should report that suspected abuse directly to the director, who will report that suspicion or abuse to SCR. All employees must present a neat and clean appearance and wear clothing suitable for conducting business for their positions. Acceptable day-to-day attire includes things like casual slacks, capri pants, jeans without rips, tears, and holes, polo shirts, collared shirts, turtlenecks, dresses, skirts, sweaters, jackets, loafers, dress shoes, high-heeled shoes, flats, dress sandals, sneakers, which are neat in appearance and not flashy. So, for example, it's all white sneakers, all black sneakers, or similar low-key kind of sneakers, nothing flashy with purple, yellow, and red all over it. We like to keep things low-key and professional looking. Unacceptable attire includes the following, but is not limited to this list. Things with an asterisk in your employee manual may be worn at the office for office hours or internal meetings only, except shorts. Shorts may be worn during the period of summer defined by BIPS as June 1st through September 1st, but they may not have cuts, tears, graphics, or lay higher than 4 inches above the knee. This includes while squatting down or bending over. The shorts should not ride too high up on the leg. Any clothing or accessories with profane, offensive, religious, or political language or words are not acceptable. Graphic tees or clothing, tank tops, muscle shirts, midriff tops, or exposed undergarments, cutoff pants, low-cut blouses, shirts, sweaters, or dresses, sweatpants and sweatshirts or yoga pants and loungewear, miniskirts or skirts with slits more than 4 inches above the knee. Leggings are not acceptable. Leggings that are thicker may be acceptable as long as they are not tight and revealing. We do not want to see any undergarments through any clothing or protruding outside of any clothing. Backless or halter-style tops are not acceptable. Hats are not acceptable unless they're for religious observance. Flip-flops, platform shoes, open-toed shoes, and dangling jewelry. Some of these things relate to professionalism, and some of these things relate to safety and hazard. Dangling jewelry, loose clothing, they could be grabbed by a patient or a child or a client and either broken or present a choking hazard to you. Open-toed shoes or flip-flops can present a hazard to you in case you get stepped on or stomped on by a client. They can also present problems if you need to chase after a client who is eloping. We want to make sure that you can move quickly in proper shoes. Tobacco, cigarettes, electronic cigarettes, and vaping devices are not allowed inside BIPS buildings, premises, or client homes during working hours. Smoking is allowed outside of BIPS premises during lunch breaks and before and after work. Marijuana or cannabis use is prohibited at any time during work hours, including inside BIPS office, events, or client homes. Working under the influence of such products is also prohibited. Legally prescribed marijuana or cannabis use is allowed as long as it doesn't impair job performance or pose a direct threat to safety. Employees prescribed medical marijuana or cannabis must report use to the office manager, director, and HR. BIPS reserves the right to modify work responsibilities if prescribed marijuana or cannabis causes drowsiness or impairment, or if signs suggest an employee may be under the influence. Alcohol, drugs, and illegal substances. BIPS prohibits the manufacture, distribution, possession, sale, or use of illegal drugs, controlled substances, and marijuana, cannabis, and THC in the workplace, on our premises, during working hours, while providing services to BIPS clients, or while engaged in any BIPS business outside of its office. Employees who are impaired by alcohol or drugs in violation of this policy will be subject to discipline up to and including termination. Legally prescribed medication is permitted as long as it is lawful, does not impair work performance, and does not pose a direct threat to the safety of the employee or others. BIPS reserves the right to modify an employee's work responsibilities if prescribed medication may cause drowsiness or impairment, or if the employee displays signs indicating an injury or accident may occur due to the use of medication. Any violations of this policy will result in discipline up to and including termination of employment. Employees shall provide BIPS with a certificate demonstrating training and certification in CPR. Employees who are already certified shall be required to take a refresher or recertification course and maintain their certification. We will offer an opportunity for employees to obtain certification or recertification in CPR once every 2 years, at no cost to employees. All employees are expected to be involved with the daily upkeep of BIPS office. Space used for clients' services shall be vacuumed or swept at the end of each day by the last provider, unless more frequent or thorough cleaning is required. Employees should empty waste baskets that become full prior to the end of the week. Spills shall be promptly cleaned, and those that involve bodily fluids shall be cleaned and sanitized as per BIPS manual and policies on infection control. BIPS endeavors to maintain competitive and fair compensation for each employee. It's the responsibility of the hourly employee and their managing supervisor to review their pay during their monthly performance review meetings as necessary, and determine when they meet the requirements for a pay raise. Additionally, BIPS uses a pay-for-performance system in which our non-probationary direct care hourly employees have monthly behavioral pinpoints that provide the opportunity for additional compensation monthly. BIPS does not grant cost of living compensation increases to employees. Compensation for drive time is covered in the next section, 4.2. Non-exempt employees are compensated for time required for work travel during their workday. Employees are not paid for commute to or from work, including time spent driving to work and home. If BIPS requires an employee to travel to multiple work locations during a continuous workday, they are compensated for time spent driving from the first work location to the second work location, and from the second location to the third location, etc. If an employee's workday is interrupted by personal matters or periods of free time, they are only compensated for time required to drive during the continuous portions of their workday. Compensation for compensable drive time is made at the employee's non-billable pay rate. When recording work time on timesheets, the amount of time spent driving to BIPS work locations must be indicated. These appointments must be converted within 24 hours. If you have any questions on how to correctly log your drive time or how the rules apply to your specific situation, please speak with the office manager. Additionally, there is a tutorial on drive time available via YouTube in the link provided in your digital version of your employee manual. You can just click that link for a video tutorial on drive time. You should be also aware that drive time is not automatically added to timesheets. It must be done by the employee at the time of conversion. For timekeeping, BIPS maintains records of employee hours worked, including overtime and leave time. Employees must report all work hours, job duties, and absences to BIPS. Falsifying time records can lead to disciplinary action and termination. Timesheets provided by BIPS or other means must be used for reporting. Time should be reported no later than 24 hours after work, except in extraordinary circumstances. Non-reporting employees may be compensated but may face discipline. Timesheets are reviewed by authorized personnel. Employees cannot make changes to reported time without approval from the office manager. Section 4.4 covers overtime. It is BIPS policy to comply with all applicable laws regarding overtime compensation. Only employees who are non-exempt under the Fair Labor Standards Act and other applicable laws may be eligible for overtime. A non-exempt employee who works over 40 hours in a work week will be paid overtime at a rate of 1.5 times their regular hourly rate for all hours worked over 40 hours during that work week. Only actual work time, as opposed to any paid or unpaid meal periods or leave time, will qualify as hours worked over the 40-hour threshold when calculating overtime. In terms of paydays, all employees are paid bi-weekly, generally every other Friday. In the event that a regularly scheduled payday falls on a holiday observed by BIPS, employees will receive their paychecks on the next day of BIPS regular operation. Electronic paychecks will be deposited to each employee's bank account on each payday. Paper paychecks may be mailed to the employee upon the employee's request, but require additional processing time due to factors out of our control with the payroll service. Employees should review their pay stubs to ensure they have been properly compensated. Each employee is responsible for verifying the pay stub for each paycheck to make sure they are paid for the correct amount of hours, including any authorized overtime they worked. If an employee believes their paycheck is not accurate, they should immediately report that to the office manager. Deduction from pay for exempt employees. Under federal and state law, certain executive, administrative, professional, and computer employees may be classified as exempt. Exempt employees are not entitled to overtime for hours worked in excess of 40 hours per work week. To qualify as exempt, employees must generally meet certain tests regarding their salary and job duties. In addition, exempt employees must usually receive a predetermined weekly salary that meets or exceeds an amount defined by law. Exempt employees need not be paid for any work week in which they perform no work. If an employer makes unauthorized deductions from an employee's predetermined salary, that employee is not paid on a salary basis. If an employee is ready, willing, and able to work, deductions may not be made for time when work is not available. Should you have any questions on your classification, please contact the office manager. It's BIPS policy and practice to accurately compensate all exempt employees, to do so in compliance with all applicable state and federal laws, and to comply with the standard salary basis requirements of the Fair Labor Standards Act. Thus, BIPS prohibits all managers and supervisors from making any improper deductions from the salaries of exempt employees. To ensure that exempt employees are paid properly for all time worked and that no improper deductions are made, such employees should review their pay stubs to make sure they are correct. If an exempt employee believes an improper deduction has been made or they have any questions, you should follow the complaint procedure in this policy. Paid sick leave is a limited purpose leave and may only be used when the mental or physical illness, injury, or health condition of the employee or the employee's family member, regardless of whether such illness, injury, or health condition has been diagnosed or requires medical care at the time of that employee requests such leave, as well as the diagnosis or treatment of care of the same. An absence from work when an employee or an employee's family member has been the victim of domestic violence, a family offense, sexual offense, stalking, or human trafficking. Or when BIPS is closed by order of a public official due to a public health emergency. If an employee is unable to report for work because of illness or for any other stated reason listed above, the employee must promptly contact the office manager and follow BIPS call-out policy. When utilizing sick leave under this policy, BIPS may require a doctor's note or other documentation in certain circumstances where permissible by law. Full-time employees or salaried employees are provided with a total of 40 hours of paid sick leave per calendar year. Sick leave accrues as of January 1st of each year for each full-time employee. They may accrue an unlimited amount of leave, but only 40 hours of sick leave may be utilized, or 40 hours of paid sick leave can be utilized in any calendar year. Full-time or salaried employees who separate from service for any reason shall not be paid for any accrued but unused sick leave. Paid sick leave shall be prorated for the year hired at the start of employment or full-time status. Sick leave shall be utilized in half-day blocks of time. For part-time and hourly employees, they accrue paid sick leave at the rate of 1 hour for every 30 hours work, up to a maximum accrual of 40 hours of paid sick leave per calendar year. Any sick leave not used by December 31st shall be carried over to the following year, but only 40 hours may be used in any given calendar year. Sick leave provided under this policy would be paid using an employee's regular hourly rate, or for an employee with different hourly rates, at their weighted average hourly rate. Paid sick leave for part-time and hourly employees must be utilized in half-day blocks of time and can only be used for absences from work hours that have been pre-scheduled on their calendar. Part-time hourly employees who separate from service for any reason shall not be paid for any accrued but unused sick leave. New full-time employees who have successfully completed at least 3 months of continuous full-time employment with BIPS shall be entitled to paid vacation days as per their offer letter. For employees who have not yet been employed by BIPS for more than 1 full year, vacation time shall be prorated based on the start date of employment, and such vacation days can be used between the beginning of the 4th month of employment with BIPS and the end of the first calendar year. For example, if the employment letter stipulates 2 weeks of vacation and the employee starts working on July 1st, then the employee shall be eligible for 1 week of vacation prior to December 31st of that year, but not before having worked 3 months at BIPS. Any vacation not used by December 31st of the first calendar year will be forfeited by the employee. Full-time employees who have successfully completed at least 1 year of continuous full-time employment with BIPS shall be entitled to 2 weeks of paid vacation annually. That paid vacation amounts shall accrue to full-time employees each year on January 1st. Eligible employees may carry over a maximum of 1 week paid vacation from one calendar year to the next. Any accrued vacation time that is permitted carryover amount that is not used at the close of business on December 31st will be forfeited by the employee. All employees, regardless of whether they are full-time or part-time, are required to submit time off requests using our current time off request form, which is available on our website. Additionally, the links are available in your employee manual. Vacation may only be taken in full-day increments unless BIPS, in writing and in advance of the vacation, grants the employee permission to take vacation in less than full-day increments. Eligible employees are encouraged to schedule their vacations so as not to interfere with their billable hour requirements and client obligations. In order to utilize accrued vacation time, employees must submit a written request for vacation at least 30 days in advance, but please refer to the time off request form for all requirements and stipulations. If an employee voluntarily terminates their employment and provides the 4 weeks of advance notice, they will be paid at the regular rate for their accrued and unused vacation time in their final paycheck. If an employee is terminated by BIPS for any reason, or if an employee voluntarily terminates their employment without providing 4 weeks notice, they will forfeit any accrued and unused vacation time. BIPS currently provides full-time employees with the following 10 paid holidays each calendar year when falling on the employee's regularly scheduled workday: New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Memorial Day, Juneteenth as observed, Independence Day as observed, Labor Day, Veterans Day as observed, Thanksgiving Day, the day after Thanksgiving Day, and Christmas Day as observed. If one of the above holidays falls on an eligible employee's regularly scheduled workday and the employee works on that day, they can be permitted to observe that holiday on a different day, provided they submit a written request to the office manager at least 2 weeks prior to the holiday, and the office manager approves that request. BIPS currently provides full-time employees with the following 10 paid holidays each calendar year when falling on the employee's regularly scheduled workday: New Year's Day, Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Memorial Day, Juneteenth, Independence Day, Labor Day, Veterans Day, Thanksgiving Day, the day after Thanksgiving, Christmas Day. If one of the above holidays fall on an eligible employee's regularly scheduled workday and the employee works on that day, they shall be permitted to observe that holiday on a different day, provided that they submit a written request to the office manager at least 2 weeks prior to the holiday and that the office manager approves that request. The request must identify the holiday in the list that the employee wants to observe on a different day and the specific calendar date on which the employee wants to observe that holiday. If an employee wants to substitute an alternative religious or cultural holiday in place of a paid holiday listed above, the employee must submit a written request to the office manager at least 4 weeks in advance of the holiday. If an employee is summoned for jury duty, they must notify the office manager immediately upon receiving the jury summons and provide the office manager with a copy of their jury summons. You should indicate to the office manager as soon as you receive a notification that you are being summoned for jury duty. Do not wait until the appearance date has been set. Upon completion of jury service, the employee must inform the office manager that their service has ended and will be expected to return to work on the next business day of their regular schedule. The employee must provide the office manager with a written proof of jury service on or before the first day of returning to work. Military leave. BIPS intends to comply with all applicable laws with respect to an employee who is absent from work due to military service and/or training. Section 4.12 covers bereavement leave. In the event of a death of an immediate family, a full-time employee will be given time off with pay for up to 4 work days within a 7 consecutive day period. Paid family leave is a complex and lengthy policy in this manual and will be covered in brief at this time. In accordance with New York State paid family leave law, We provide eligible employees with time off for family-related reasons as detailed herein. Employees on paid family leave, or PFL, will receive partial pay through an insurance policy funded by a small weekly post-tax payroll deduction, the amount of which is set in accordance with state law. Eligibility depends on the number of hours an employee is regularly scheduled to work. For purpose of this policy only, full-time employees are those employees who are regularly scheduled to work 20 or more hours per week for BIPS, and part-time employees are those employees who are regularly scheduled to work less than 20 hours per week for BIPS. A full-time employee is eligible to take PFL after they've been employed by BIPS for 26 consecutive weeks. A part-time employee is eligible to take PFL after they've worked 175 days for BIPS. Qualifying reasons for PFL. Once eligible, an employee can take PFL for the following reasons: to provide care for a child, regardless of their age, a parent, including parents-in-law, grandparents, grandchildren, spouses, or domestic partners with a serious health condition. Providing care includes providing necessary physical care, emotional support, visitation assistance and treatment, transportation, and so on. During that period of leave, the employee must be in close physical proximity to the care recipient. This cannot be care for someone in another country while you're in the U.S. or in another state while you're in the U.S. and not with them in person to provide that care. Serious health condition means an illness or injury or impairment or physical and mental condition that involves either inpatient care or continuing treatment or supervision by a healthcare provider. Ordinarily, illnesses like the common cold, the flu, an earache, an upset stomach, a minor ulcer, and so on, do not constitute serious health conditions. It can also be to bond with a new child following the birth, adoption, or placement in foster care of that child. In the case of a birth, the leave must be taken within the 12-month period immediately after the child is born. In the case of adoption, placement, leave may be taken prior to the adoption or placement if the employee's absence is necessary for the placement or adoption to proceed. All leave must be taken within 1 year of the first day of leave or within 1 year of the adoption placement. To attend a qualifying exigency arising out of the fact that the employee's spouse, domestic partner, child, or parent is on or has been called to active military duty, or for certain qualifying circumstances related to COVID-19. The rest of the policy is detailed throughout the manual. Please read through it in detail and note any questions that you may have. If at any time you feel that you may be eligible and qualify for taking PFL, please contact the office manager to review the policy in detail to find out what needs to be done to submit a request for PFL, collect any paperwork, and submit that paperwork to the carrier for coverage. Section 5 covers benefits. Employees who have been employed by BIPS for at least 90 days may be eligible to participate in various benefit programs that we offer. Health insurance. We strive to ensure that its employees have access to health insurance and currently offers health insurance to all eligible full-time employees who elect to participate in such insurance program. BIPS will pay up to $10,000 per year of the premium, which translates to $833.33 per month, for an eligible full-time employee's individual coverage in the company-sponsored plan. Benefits continuation, also called COBRA coverage. If an employee received health insurance benefits through their employment with BIPS and their employment ends, health insurance benefits may be continued at the employee's expense after their employment with BIPS ends. Section 5.3 covers professional development stipends. We offer a stipend to full-time employees who have been employed by BIPS for at least 90 days to be used for attending conferences, maintaining membership in professional organizations, and or enrolling in professional development courses. BIPS also offers a retirement savings plan, also known as a 401k retirement savings. They do this through our payroll service, which is currently Paychecks. The chart in your employee manual indicates what contributions may be made, what your contribution can be from 0% to 6% with company matching funds. So for example, if you go with a standard auto-enrolled 6% contribution, the company will provide 3.5% matching funds. You should be aware, company matching funds will only be retained by the employee if the employee stays with the company for a full 2-year period. If the employee separates from the company prior to 2 years, the employee keeps all the money that they themselves had contributed to their 401k plan. However, they lose access to any company matching funds. The company will keep those matching funds. If you stay with the company for more than 2 years and separate your employment, then you keep all the funds that you contribute as well as all company matching funds promised. Please be familiar with the plan. Additionally, once you become eligible, Paychex will automatically send you a packet of information indicating when your 401k savings can start and what plan benefits there are. You can always opt out and change your plan settings in the Paychex Flex app or Paychex Flex online. Your 401k participation is 100% entirely in your control and controlled by you alone. Performance monitoring is covered in Section 5.5. Professional and personal support is provided to all BIPS employees through performance monitoring and HR coaching. Each employee meets with their direct supervisor on a monthly basis to review their performance. Performance monitoring encompasses ongoing training and staff development opportunities through platforms and additional resources. Human resource coaching is also available by a third-party consultant targeting coworker relationships, management of challenging situations, and assistance with establishing a healthy work-life balance. Section 6 covers communications. Staff meetings will be held on dates as determined by the director and their designee. Those meetings are intended to be informative meetings at which BIPS may provide employees with information regarding company activities, changes in the workplace, and other pertinent information. An employee who has job-related complaints or questions should first address them with the office manager and/or HR in an attempt to resolve those issues. If the employee and the office manager or HR are unable to resolve the problem, or the employee is not satisfied with the resolution, then they should contact the director. In your manual is an employee manual acknowledgement form. This form is a requirement for you to review and sign and submit to the company. A link is available to digitally sign that form in your digital copy of your manual. You can click the link in that form and submit that to the office manager. Your employee manual also has complaint forms that you can use if needed for submitting complaints, whether they're unlawful harassment, which are non-sex-based harassment or general complaints, or sexual harassment complaints. You do not need to use these forms if you have a complaint that you would wish to submit, but these are available in case you choose to use those forms. In addition, the manual contains Appendix B, which is the Communicable Disease Plan. This is a plan as required by the New York HERO Act, and this plan is a template for airborne infectious disease exposure prevention. This plan will be modified as needed in case there is an outbreak or a public health crisis that is declared. Thank you. That is the end of the presentation.